pleasure to be joined by Master Distiller Emeritus Chris Morris of Woodford Reserve. Man, Chris, it is so good to have you on. It has just been so fun to follow the work that you've been doing. Maybe as we kick off, can you tell us a little bit about your work at Woodford and just kind of lead us into what we're doing with these two releases?
Oh, sure. Good to see you, Lee. And hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon and evening. Woodford Reserve was launched in 1996, followed by Double Oaked in 2012. And I've been involved with every drop of whiskey that's ever been in a bottle. So I'm very proud of that. I've been master distiller at Woodford Reserve for 20 years, responsible for the quality, the flavor profile of all of our Woodford Reserve products. And now, since February, I've been master distiller emeritus as we welcome my protege, Elizabeth McCall, as our new master distiller.
Awesome. And Chris, I mean, you have been working on really developing a sense of quality and consistency at Woodford Reserve that I think we've all come to respect and really expect at this point. I'm really excited to walk through these two releases. So, for everyone joining us, we're going to be walking through the Woodford Reserve Bourbon, and then we'll be walking through Double Oaked. Um, so, Chris, as we jump in, let's start with the bourbon. Now, you mentioned, I mean, having touched really every drop that comes through the distillery. So, I mean, tell us a little bit about that work in creating this consistent, really beloved product.
Well, thank you. Yes, the concept behind Woodford Reserve is really a novel or revolutionary concept because when you think about all the classic whiskeys, they were made by individuals for a different time, different place. For example, the founder of our parent company, Brown Forman, George Garvin Brown, made Old Forester in the 1870s for bourbon drinkers in Kentucky. He had never heard of Syrah or Baijiu or Soju, or he hadn't heard of vodka. They didn't exist. So he was making what he knew the local market wanted. Now we come many years later, and in 1996, well, before that, of course, we had to get things started. We had decided to create a new bourbon, a bourbon that would be enjoyed on a global basis. And we know, of course, in the 1990s that people of the world have a diverse palate. Some people prefer wine, beer, scotch, rum, many different flavor profiles. And at that time, bourbon was in decline. Bourbon sales were dropping. So if we were going to target bourbon drinkers only, we'd be going after an ever shrinking target. So instead, we had the concept of the five areas of flavor backed by the five sources of flavor. How do we get as much flavor into a glass of whiskey as we can that will attract the most palates? A whiskey that'll have fruit character for those wine drinkers and brandy drinkers, say cognac drinkers, for example. Spice notes for those people who like spicy wines and spicy beers, spicy liqueurs like a soju or a baijiu. How about the wood notes that almost everybody enjoys, an aged brandy, an aged tequila, an aged rum, an aged whiskey, a barrel of oak that had beer in it, oak, oak, oak. And what about grain character? Think about beer drinkers, think about malt whiskey drinkers, grain character. And then certainly the signature flavor for Kentucky bourbon, sweet aromatic notes, those sweet barrel notes that you're also going to find in a rum, for example. So, how do we make these flavors come to life? How do we make this new bourbon attract as many palates as possible? And that is where the concept and the processes that we use today to make Woodford Reserve special come into play. We have to have a unique new barrel. We have to have a different fermentation style. How do we distill? How do we do this? How do we do that? How do we maximize the flavor sources that every whiskey in the world has in common? A whiskey is a whiskey. What's our grain recipe? How does it ferment? How do we distill? How do we mature an oak? But make those also different. And we certainly have done that job correctly because Woodford
Absolutely.
now is the world's number one, the world's favorite, I'd like to say, super premium American whiskey, the world's favorite. And you don't get there unless you taste good. And that's the bottom line. Everything we do, Lee, is based on flavor presentation. And that's what I'm so excited that we're going to taste Woodford and then Double Oak tonight is to see the range of flavors that our
Mm,
two great whiskeys can bring to all of us. Now, you mentioned consistency, and I hope I've mentioned the term balance. As your customers know, every single barrel tastes different. Even
mhm.
barrels filled on the same day with the same spirit stream will taste different because the barrels themselves are different. And they'll go into different warehouses and different locations within a warehouse. So every barrel will have its personality, and every day will have its own personality, and every year, etc. So we are having a diverse range of flavor created across a span of years. There are barrels that are really sweet, barrels that are really fruity, spicy barrels, really wood driven barrels, barrels that have a lot of nice grain character. Every barrel of Woodford tastes different, and not one barrel of Woodford tastes like Woodford Reserve. I can vouch for that.
Yeah.
Not a single barrel tastes like Woodford Reserve because that bottle that we're going to taste has approximately 140 barrels in it. We're batching barrels together, those spicy barrels, those fruity barrels, those sweet barrels. We're batching them together to create a balanced flavor profile. So Woodford, and this is proven, Woodford is balanced. So if
Mhm.
you like a spicy drink, you're going, oh, Woodford's just spicy enough. If you don't like a spicy drink, Woodford's not too spicy because all the flavors are in balance. So Woodford will present your palate with what you like. It's a very versatile whiskey. It meets your expectations, your needs. And that, again, is why it's been so successful.
Yeah. And that's a great starting point. Frankly, you're just making me thirsty talking about it. So why don't we jump in? So let's start with the Woodford bourbon. I'll hold it up for everyone, and why don't you just talk about some of the notes, the nose, and man, look at that. I mean, beautiful amber color.
Oh, yes. And as the Kentucky straight bourbon, that color is 100% natural, derived from our unique Woodford Reserve barrel, which is toasted like a wine barrel and charred like a whiskey barrel. Absolutely unique concept in the world of whiskey barrels that we pioneered again back in the early 1990s at our own cooperage, the Brown Forman cooperage in Kentucky. So, again, this is balance. And I can't, Lee, I don't know what you prefer. I can't tell you if you're going to find fruit first or if it's going to be sweet first or spicy. I don't know. I will tell you what I knows, and our listeners, our viewers, they'll have to decide what they find in Woodford Reserve because you're always right, of course, because this is personal preference, personal
Absolutely.
perception. But when you have balance, you're going to see different reactions. And if we were in a room right now with a bunch of friends with a glass of Woodford in front of them, and I guarantee you, because I've done it time and time again, I'd say, who tastes spice? Hands will go up. Who tastes fruit? Different hands will go up. Who tastes wood character? Different hands will go up. And it proves the variation in taste
Hmm.
perception any audience has. And of course, everybody's right because that's what they taste at that moment. Now, as you note, the aroma, most of what we taste is through our sense of smell. And I am getting, because I've been on the job, I've been tasting barrels today.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I'm a little prejudiced right now,
All right.
but I am getting a lot of fruit in my glass and a lot of oak. And I am getting peach, white peach,
Oh wow.
a little bit of a nectarine, maybe a clementine, a little citrus. So I'm getting some nice, sharp fruit notes. And there is a soft oak, a little sprinkling of brown sugar. Again, that's my perception right now. On the nose, we haven't tasted yet.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm getting first of all, I love hearing your notes, which is a lot of fun. I'm getting like candied cherries, definitely
Good.
that
Yeah.
soft oak at the end. There's almost like it really is in that candy cherry place where it's like a little bit sweeter
Yeah.
and rich, and it's like it's perfect. It's just saying like, hey, you can drink me now.
Okay. Yeah. Now, which means we're going to have a sip,
Yep.
and we are 90.4 proof. So everybody needs to keep that in mind in case that first little sip, if you hadn't had a sip yet, you're going to have that little alcohol charge. So take a sip, swallow, and then take another sip, and you'll start to be able to perceive more of the flavor once you get past that initial alcohol note.
Mhm.
Oh, and that fruit goes right into floral notes.
Absolutely.
And a little now the spice is starting to move forward. When you're complex, when you're balanced, it's like reading a great novel. You just don't open one page and the whole book is there. You're
Yeah.
turning the pages. This is going to reveal itself. The story will come out page after page. And that's the good thing about Woodford. It invites you to have another sip. And then, oh, it's it's different. I'm going to get another sip. Oh, it's different. It's always bringing you in. You cannot turn it down. It is always changing and exciting. It's not changing. Your
No.
perception, your ability to enjoy it is changing. The whiskey's the same.
Absolutely. Now you've, I mean, really set on a similar proof point for both releases. What helped you land at that proof, and why have you kind of kept that same consistency across multiple releases?
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, the easiest thing for a distiller to do is change proof and age. And you start now muddying the water. Is it really different? Well, oh, it seems spicier. Well, you find out it's an extremely higher proof presentation than
Sure.
another. And is it spicier or do I just have more alcohol hit? So I like every product to be the same proof, except for batch proof. And the way
Yep.
our batch proof is different because it's different by proof. All of our products, otherwise, all the Masters collection, distillery series, our bourbon rye, malt, wheat, double oak that we're going to taste next are all the same proof. So when you wonder why does it taste different, there'll be one answer only: the grain recipe or the barrel.
Hmm.
Everything else is the same. Same water, fermentation, distillation, maturation, proof presentation. Everything is the same. You need a common base for comparison. Now, why 90 proof? When we launched the brand 27 years ago, 90 proof was that was a pretty high proof at that time. It's hard for people to believe to today with the popularity of bourbon and high proof expressions and other variables. That was pretty high proof. And we thought it was just a perfect delivery of flavor. And it's certainly proven us well. So that's our reason. It's a great way to enjoy Woodford, get all the flavor without being too put off by a high proof presentation.
Absolutely. So, what are you getting taste wise? What are you getting on your palate on the bourbon?
We get lots of fruit, lots of floral character, of course, some nice sweet aromatics, but now you can find some spice, a little bit of spice. And again, it's going to vary for each of us. I like that little cracked peppercorn, a little black pepper, very tiny hint of mint,
Yeah.
anise. I mean, it just goes on and on. Very, very balanced, very complex.
Yeah, and I love how that finish just continues to extend. For me, I almost get like that toasted marshmallow. So you're getting like
Yeah.
the, the oak or the wood, like you were roasting a marshmallow. So a little bit of that oak mixed in with just kind of this char and sweetness all mixed together.
And see, that finish is so much the barrel. Our unique barrel, our wood is dried for a minimum of 9 months out of doors, which removes a lot of its acidity, removes the bite. And then the toasting and the charring are going to give you some of those marshmallow notes and, of course, those sweet aromatic notes. So it's really a terrific finish. And the influence of our unique triple pot still distillation process really
Absolutely.
again give you some creamy heavy notes in the spirit itself. It all just comes together. It's an orchestra. It's not one single note playing. It's the orchestra, all the instruments playing and making their contribution to the final product.
And speaking of kind of the barrel char, what level of charring do you do on these barrels? I know that was one of the questions that came up as we jumped into the bourbon.
Yeah. Now, if we were buying barrels from an independent cooperage, which is great, they all do a super job. But it'd be like going into this the clothing store, and you always I get a medium or you get a large, the standard 1, 2, 3, 4 char, and you order that standard char because we make our own barrels. It's like going into the tailor and having a custom made shirt or jacket made. It's to your specifications. So we char not by 1, 2, 3, 4. We char for 25 seconds,
Okay.
which might be a 2.5, but
Yeah.
it's 25.
That's awesome. And having been to the cooperage, I mean, it is a science and an art in and of itself. I mean, it really helps you appreciate the complexity of every aspect of this process from beginning to end.
Yeah, that cooperage is a real treasure. It's a special place for us, and we opened it in 1945, so we've been making barrels for a long time.
And I think that's a great transition into double oaked because I know when we took the tour, there are special barrels for double oaked, and it was like seeing that one toy you really wanted to get. You saw the special barrel. Um, how what was the inspiration behind Woodford Double Oaked? And we were talking offline. This is something that's always on my bar, so I would love to just get some details on this release.
Yes. Well, the inspiration for Double Oak comes from the Masters collection. And one of our early Masters collection was seasoned oak finish. And I had admired the work of Dr. Bilston at Glenmorangie on seasoning oak. The longer that wood dries out of doors, the more its flavor is shaped. And now, let's make a barrel for a master's collection that was seasoned far longer than any bourbon would have been seasoned. Again, as I mentioned, we routinely season our Woodford barrel oak, which is a long time, for nine
Yeah.
months. Well, we seasoned for 3.5 years, and
Wow.
that made an extremely dark, rich whiskey, again, seasoned oak. Well, I thought that was really cool. Let's make a special barrel for double oaked. But double oaked is a finished whiskey.
Hmm.
Seasoned oak was a finished whiskey. We took fully mature Woodford that we just sipped and put it in the seasoned oak barrel for approximately a year. And it became just that huge, huge, rich character that I was so pleased with. And well, 3.5 years is a long time to wait for oak,
Yeah.
especially if you're going to make a lot of whiskey, hopefully, if you're successful. So let's alter the concept, but let's keep the concept the same at the same time. Let's finish Woodford Reserve in a second barrel. We didn't invent finishing, but instead of going into the port barrel or the sherry barrel, the normal finishing where you go into a used barrel, which is great, But let's be like seasoned oak, the first whiskey to be finished in a new barrel. Let's do that again. Let's finish Woodford Reserve in a new barrel made specifically for the process, the finishing Woodford Reserve. And the new barrel will use 9-month seasoned wood, but it will be toasted 4 times longer than the Woodford barrel. The
Wow.
Woodford barrel is toasted for 10 minutes. The double oak barrel is toasted for 40 minutes.
Wow.
We mentioned, you asked how long or what char level we exposed the first, well, the Woodford Reserve barrel to, which is a 25-second char. This is approximately a 5-second char for the double oak barrel. And basically, they're mirror opposites. Longer toast, lighter char. No, they're different.
Yeah.
Now we put fully mature Woodford in the double oaked barrel for approximately 1 year. It's a finish. And look at the color difference. It's
Absolutely.
almost twice as dark, and it's no longer a balanced whiskey. And this, as you noted earlier, Lee, is 90 proof, just like our
Yep.
bourbon. So why does it taste different? It's not because it's a different proof. It's because of the second barrel.
Mhm.
Now, where Woodford is a balance across the 5 areas of flavor, the sweet aromatics, fruit, spice, wood, and grain character, double oaked is out of balance by design. It's all about wood and sweet aromatics. And where I didn't want to tell anyone watching us what they nose or taste, I'll tell you what I nose and taste on the bourbon. I'll tell you what you nose and taste on double oaked because it's out of balance.
Yeah.
Butterscotch, maple syrup, caramel, chocolate, vanilla. It's all about the toasted oak, your toasted marshmallow. There you go.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah,
So,
and I mean, for me, the butterscotch, that creaminess comes out in the nose immediately. Like that's
mm,
actually I've noticed a few people I'll ask you the question when we're done. But a lot of people are sharing their favorite cocktails with Woodford and Woodford Double Oaked. Um, but that's where I usually use this in an old fashioned because I get some punchier sweetness that I can then work with in a few other ways with different bitters and different syrups.
I I agree. I'm not a bartender, but a number of years ago, I came up with the double oaked smoked old fashioned. And I start with double oaked. I get some wood smoked sugar as my in which I make my simple syrup with wood
Yeah,
smoked, and then put in some chocolate bitters. And my gosh, that is an extremely rich old fashioned. And you can add a cherry or two. You don't really need a lot of citrus in that. It's just so rich. And you can have a lot of fun with double oaked. Absolutely.
what I also really enjoy about Double Oaked is its complexity. So I know that really we are uh, uh, celebrating the virtues of the barrel, but I find that when I put this on ice or add a little water, man, it opens up and just
Oh, yeah.
reveals a whole new world.
Because remember, it starts as Woodford Reserve,
Yeah,
the balance of 5 areas of flavor. So every flavor in the Woodford Reserve glass is still here.
yeah,
It just has a new layer of flavor on top of it. So every fruit note, every spice, everything you enjoy in Woodford is still in the glass. It's like you put an extra layer of icing on the cake. That cake is still in there. So you just got to cut
mhm,
through. So again, it is very complex, but its overwhelming flavor presentation again is out of balance because we finished it in that brand new second double oaked barrel, and it's always a new barrel. We never reuse that double oaked barrel, and because of that, Woodford Reserve Double Oaked is a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. It's never
absolutely.
oak that's not new and charred.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Chris, for you, what notes, like in particular, on the taste, are you like zeroed in on? So as you get into double oaked, like what do you zero in on?
I really like, as you get into it, that sort of s'more, that campfire chocolate,
Mm,
the graham crackery of our malt, and the toasted burnt sugar notes. So I'm immediately by campfire with friends. That's just what it just takes me right there.
that's awesome. It sounds like there's a number, or it looks like there's a number of people that want your old fashioned recipe. So we'll have to we'll have to connect offline and
Okay,
get that
sounds
working.
good.
I
Great.
think that you got everybody with the smoked sugar, so that's what
Yeah.
got everybody going.
And no, it's good stuff. Again, I give all credit to our great bartending colleagues in the industry, the professionals that come up with all sorts of wonderful drinks. But I have to hang my hat on that one. I was proud of that.
So one of the questions that just came up, Chris, is do you have uh, any stories as far as the stoutness of this barrel, or excuse me, of this bottle, versus the other releases?
Well, the those of those of us who have a longer memory, we did initially launch Double Oak in our Woodford Reserve flask bottle. Had a big copper label on it because we really weren't ready for Double Oak. I sort of pushed it through, and it took off, and it just caught us by surprise about how successful and how much in demand it was. And because it was so successful, it really deserved its own bottle.
Mm,
But of course, our package is so iconic. It really changed the way American whiskey looks that it had to replicate or honor the original bottle. So again, this is more of it's the Woodford look, but it's more of the homage. It's sort of it's heavier, thicker to really emphasize the fact that it's the barrel that is making the difference in that product. So it's a homage or homage to the original look, but also giving us that fact that it's a big thick barrel that is giving us the flavor.
yeah. Question that just came up, which I love, is: are there any ways that you personally use to really diversify your flavor vocabulary? So how do you kind of start to understand kind of a wider, broader array of those flavor nuances as you're drinking whiskey?
Well, that's a great question, and I learned from some of the great masters who have been mentors and friends, and I know that you have to keep training yourself, but also explore flavors outside of not only your own brand, but your own category. So I taste wine. I go to wine classes, craft beers, malt whiskeys, cognacs, etc. So I'm constantly tasting and seeing what the flavor notes by those distillers or winemakers or cellar masters are saying about their product. Can I
Mm,
find that? Can I recognize that in their product? And then the core flavors of any great whiskey, but certainly Woodford Reserve is like, what does apple taste like? Well, let's
totally.
have apples. Let's have some oranges. So again, be, because these are all natural flavor compounds produced through our process, they're replicated in nature. You just always have to keep in mind that you're going to explore every day.
Yeah.
And I do that consciously. I do that consciously.
I think also, one thing that's been really fun for me growing in this space is taking the time to intentionally like observe those flavors, right? I think sometimes when we drink certain things or eat certain things, we don't actually take the time to really kind of think about what what we're eating, what we're smelling, and I think being a little bit more intentional can be
Yes.
super helpful.
Yes. So you want to enjoy. You don't want to overthink a nice glass of Woodford Reserve or a glass of Double Oaked. But if you're going to be studious, certainly do so. But don't do that every time. We make these great products for all of us to enjoy.
Hmm. And Chris, you said it towards the beginning. I think your own palate is how you're enjoying that whiskey, and so the notes that you get in Woodford is such a great. It almost provides a great masterclass in that because it is such an array of flavors. But what you get is what you get, and that's great. Like that's a great way to enjoy the whiskey and be okay with the flavors that you're enjoying being completely different from someone else.
That's right. It's your permission to be yourself.
Absolutely. Well, Chris, this has been an incredible time. Thank you so much for making this time to share both the Woodford Bourbon and Double Oaked with us. I mean, just getting the time with you is incredible. So, really appreciate you walking us through the tasting notes of these and kind of the stories behind each of them. Hopefully, we can do this again in the future and continue sharing a little bit more about this work.
I look forward to that. And thanks everyone for joining us tonight. Cheers.
All right, cheers. Well, everybody, you can get these products right now on Reserve Bar. Actually, you can get them in the live stream right now. But if you missed the live stream and you want to get them later, both are available on Reserve Bar right now. Please reach out to us if you have any questions through our social accounts. And again, Chris, thank you so much. Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks, Lee.